What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about Hellions, number 12 by Zeb Wells and Steven Segovia. And in this video, we are going to learn whether or not Nanny is going to regale all of Krakoa's newfound allies and enemies at the Hellfire Gala of Mr. Sinister's secret clone farm shenanigans that we learned about back in Hellions number 3 and 4. We're also going to learn whether or not Wildchild and Aurora will ever have a chance again. And more importantly, the fate of the Mr. Sinister who was lost to Arako during 10 of Swords. We're going to talk about all that and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoy the video, I humbly ask that you Hulk smash that like button because it really helps the channel out. Now that said, let's hit that intro.
Word wise, grass only greener when it's fertilized. Gave them truth in these songs, they prefer to lies. Destiny beautiful, adrift in her purple lies. You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, so when we picked this book up, the Hellfire Gala has already been in full swing, and as we learn as soon as we jump in, Quanon, Havoc, and Mr. Sinister are all dressed for success to go to the gala. However, the rest of the Hellions are not allowed at the gala because as Mr. Sinister points out, in order for them to even have been invited to the gala, they would have to have been less them. Empath, Orphan Maker and Nanny, Grey Crow, and Wildchild have to sit in at home. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to get to have some fun. Of course, at this Hellfire Gala, we get to see at least some of the Hellions interacting with the Avengers and various other characters. We see Betsy and Quanon encounter one another, and they seem to be getting along better at the very least. We also know that Havoc is spending a lot of this comic campaigning once again for Madeline Pryor to be resurrected. He wants her back, and at various points in this comic speaking with both Xavier and Magneto. But before we dig a little deeper into that, the reason why everything in this comic goes completely off the rails is because, yes, the other Hellions were not allowed to come to this party. However, they're going to show up anyway. Grey Crow, who is already 3 sheets in the wind, just says, screw it, we're going, we're mutants, we are allowed to go. And when they get there, things start taking a very bad turn. Because at this point, while Mr. Sinister is talking it up with Thor and Black Panther from the Avengers, Nanny comes along and basically starts laying out Mr. Sinister's crimes before the Avengers, accusing him of being an abductor, an abuser, and murderer of children. Something that definitely gets Sinister's attention and most definitely makes the Avengers feel a little bit uncomfortable, leading to Black Panther and Thor walking away from Sinister. And when Sinister asking if Nanny is going to try and keep this whole thing going all night, she lets him know, yes, she plans to. Now, if you're wondering what is going on here, it is because back in the pages of Hellions number 3 and number 4, we learned that Nanny, while they were at Sinister's old cloning facility at the Essex State Home for Foundlings, she found evidence of all of the children that he basically had killed in his efforts to advance his cloning technologies. And she has had a bone to pick with him ever since. But by the time all this came out, 10 of Swords had happened, so it kind of got put on the back burner, and now Nanny is taking it off of the back burner and putting it on high heat because she's ready to fry. Not only is that going on, but we also know that Havoc is still carrying the torch for Madeline Pryor. I mentioned earlier that he was speaking with Xavier, but he has also even gone as far as speaking with Magneto, who is basically giving him the same answer that he's already gotten, that they've considered it and they're not going to do it. She's not going to be allowed. And while this absolutely sucks for him, at the very least, he gets to hang out with Polaris again. So honestly, if I were him, I would just give up on the whole Madeline Pryor thing. Just go out with Polaris. She seems very interested at this particular point in time. You know, what's the worst that could happen? Speaking of lost loves and lonely hearts, we also know that Wildchild, he ends up bumping into his old flame, Aurora from X Factor. And for those who are not familiar, back in some of the old Alpha Flight comics, Wildchild and Aurora used to be a thing, but it was at a weird time in both of their lives where at this particular point, Aurora was dating Wildchild, who at the time was going by the name Wild wild heart, and he also didn't have the more monstrous look that he was sporting back in the day, especially around the time post Age of Apocalypse. He actually looked probably closer to what he does now, and Aurora was deeply in love with him, but because he was turning back into his monstrous self, he left Aurora because he feared that she would not want to be with him anymore. And this is what leads to this whole awkward exchange. And we also got to bring up the fact that Aurora was not necessarily in the best place in her life at the moment, and when he left her, it actually made things even worse. Now, later on, Wildchild ends up bumping into Aurora again, only this time Dakin is around, and of course we know, if you've been reading X Factor, Dakin and Aurora, they are a thing, and Wildchild could not be more pissed about it. And Dakin being Dakin, he is more than happy to throw hands with Wildchild, and not just for the love of Aurora, but yeah, just because. This is what kind of leads to everything going tits up, where not only is Wildchild trying to get into a fight with Dakin, leading to Greycrow trying to restrain him, and then of course Orphan Maker, who has been trying to get drunk this entire time, but no one is willing to let him get drunk or even incur the wrath of Nanny to allow him to get drunk. But Empath has given him the sensation of being drunk, using his powers, taking away some of his inhibitions and helping him feel a little more happy. This is actually an instance where Empath has used his powers for a good thing. Actually, it's crazy. Somehow it's a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. You see, that's character growth. Empath he's trying. He's really trying. Speaking of Empath, Empath also runs into Cat's Eye and Roulette from the Hellions, two women who, by his own admission, he hasn't seen since the last time they were around one another, and he tried to make them kill each other. And of course, as one would imagine, they aren't particularly happy about it either, and they start beating the Kool-Aid out of this man. And if that weren't enough, Nanny, who is also 3 sheets in the wind, she gets pissed off and decides that she's going to use this opportunity to kill Mr. Sinister, breaking a glass bottle and trying to shiv Mr. Sinister amidst all the confusion. And of course, all this gets wrapped up because Magneto is on the case, and a lot of them do wear a copious amount of metal on their body. He's able to dump them in a portal made by magic to send them home, with the exception of Havoc. This leads to a very interesting moment because, the Hellions have kind of been treated as this dysfunctional family, a group of people who don't really have anything in common with one another other than the fact that they're considered undesirables, and they've likely killed lots of people, and in some cases, most of them are former villains. Other than that, they don't really have a whole lot in common. They haven't really had many moments to actually become more of an actual family than what we know them as. And this is kind of one of those moments where I feel like they actually did kind of get to have that moment where, even with Greycrow kind of giving Empath some tough love, I still kind of feel like it came from a place of love, even though it was technically a low blow towards Empath, especially as he's trying to understand why people don't like him. And once again, he's a sociopath. He doesn't understand these things, but he's not a sociopath because he was born that way. He's a sociopath because of his mutant powers. We also know that Nanny, aside from everything else, still wants to kick the crap out of Mr. Sinister and kill him. But the thing I found very interesting in all this is, while Quanon is giving them a moment to kind of see something beautiful, because this particular point they were supposed to witness the fireworks, the big fireworks that Emma Frost promised in Marauders number 21. They haven't gotten a chance to see it. They got kicked out before they could see him, but Quanon actually uses her psionic abilities to make them feel like they are watching fireworks. But all the while that they're enjoying this moment, one of the things I found very interesting is that we haven't really heard hide nor hair out of the Mr. Sinister who was lost to Arakko. Last we saw of him, he was captured by Tarn the Uncaring and was basically being ripped apart. We assume that he was dead, but I mean, once again, in comics, until you see a body, you can't really assume anyone is dead. But we do know that he was basically ripped into equal parts, not unlike what we saw in Hellions number 6. And apparently Tarn has either let this version of Mr. Sinister make it back to Krakoa, or maybe this version escaped. But whatever's happening, something tells me we're going to be seeing the Locust Vial return very soon. And we do know that on the Reign of X poster that Tarn the Uncaring was very heavily teased as returning. So whatever is going on here, it is definitely going to be a huge problem for the Hellions. That said, this book actually had a lot of really cool stuff going on. And once again, it was, for me, more Hellions, which I am never upset about getting more Hellions. It was always a good thing. We got to see some other really cool stuff too. We got to see some interesting moments with Quentin Quire and Phoebe and how he didn't like her Hellfire Gala costume because it made her look too much like Nurse Ratched, and her not even understanding exactly what it was he was talking about because even in telepathy, she misheard him, thinking that he said Hearse Ratchet. I also enjoyed the playful banter back and forth between some of the rest of the core Hellions like Empath, Nanny, Orphan Maker, Wild Child, Grey Crow. I love the fact that, yeah, these guys are becoming more of a family. It's a really cool thing. I like the fact that Quanon and Grey Crow are becoming closer, and while they're not exactly pursuing that love, that interest that they have between one another, it's still really cool to see that, it's something is budding there. And I also love the fact that Grey Crow and Quanon are probably the only two people on the island who they can be truly who they really are around one another, like their guard comes down. It's a really interesting thing to watch, and I'm very interested in seeing if this whole Wild Child thing where he's trying to make his pack grow in numbers, he's trying to make this a thing. I'm really curious to see if the day will come when we actually to see whether or not this is going to play out. Like, who is he eventually going to get to like him? I pretty much am going to tell you right now, I don't think it's going to be Aurora, but I would be very interested to see if and when it ever happens ever in life. And of course, the other Mr. Sinister, I actually appreciated the point where he did meet up with Franklin Richards and offer to fix his not being a mutant anymore problem. Either way, it was a great comic, lots to look forward to, and I'm looking very forward to Tarn the Uncairned and the Locust Vial returning, maybe figuring out more about what's going on with this version of Mr. Sinister. But that said, if you enjoyed this video, Hulk smash that like button and make sure to share this video all over the internet and with all your friends so they'll know how you leveled up your comic book big brain in regards to Hellions and the Hellfire Gala. On your way out, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know what you thought about Hellions number 12. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.